Writing Prompt Podcast. I'm Matthias.
And I'm Jarvis.
Jarvis and I are lead addicts, as in addicts to the material found in pencils. And so we scribble away on the page. However, we don't always make sense in what we write.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So we're doing a challenge. Each week, one of us sits down for 30 minutes to write a complete short story. Our goal is to write that story using 3 of 4 randomly generated words.
Then we come on the podcast, we read the story, we talk about what we can learn from writing it, and then we talk about stories sent in by you listeners.
Exactamundo. We're simply here to help you do the right thing. A Doof Media production.
Excellent.
63. We've been doing this for 63 weeks.
Hey, we're coming up on that special number. Coming close. Number 70.
How have you been doing, buddy? How's it going? Doing the right thing this week?
I didn't do the right thing this week because you did the right thing this week, but
I did do the right thing this week.
You did do the right thing this week. It's been good. The main thing is, of course, doing Decomposing Worm, which takes more and more time, or maybe it took a lot of time the first time and I just didn't notice, and it's now every week I just realized how much. I think right now I'm doing 20 hours a week of podcast stuff.
Oh my god! Yeah, that seems about right. I mean, what it's 4 hours to record Decomposing Worm. It's 8 hours to edit it, and then it's 3 hours to record this one. Yeah, and
then all the actual prep work stuff, which is a lot. So fun stuff. I mean, it is. Haven't written too much story stuff. I need to make more time for that too.
Wow, are you not a writer anymore? Have you put down your pencil?
I am a writer every other week when I do the right thing. So
I see. Well, this week I did the right thing, and I will have to tell you, it was fantastic.
It was. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I don't know. I know I really don't talk about it that much, but this week has been especially difficult. Just a lot of things going on. But I think the saving grace for me this week was actually being able to find that time to actually do the right thing. So I decided to try my hand at a idea that I've just kind of been mulling over for quite some time. And of course, it is inspired partially by me watching a lot of Teen Wolf and progressively enjoying anything supernatural. And also I have just been reading a lot of books about nature. I think they're called ornithological texts. So just people going through and talking about, this is where this is how it happens. This is what these creatures' lives normally are like, and I've been really digging that.
I love those as a kid so much, the monster books and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I just love how much passion you can really see come across on the page, and especially when they're talking about something quite mundane. So this week, I guess my story is a collection of the both. It's a tale of supernatural ornithology.
So this week's words were cue, precision, aim, and advisor. Which ones did you use this week, Jarvis?
I used all of them besides aim, because I could not figure out a place to really put it. Well, I mean, in all honesty, all of the words for this week I feel were really hand-fisted into the story. And I think that's because I allowed myself just to write a story that I want to write instead of being influenced by the words, which is fine. I mean, do what you can to get yourself to write. I just know that my main focus this week was not on the 4 words. So
so the theme this week is atmosphere. So obviously we're going to get into that and see how you executed that in the story, but how did you get into a mindset to write some stuff with atmosphere?
Yeah, so one huge thing that I really did that kind of influenced me to want to write about atmosphere this week was that I watched the newest version of The Pet Sematary, which, if you haven't seen it, it's an extremely okay film. It's very similar to the old one, only with a weird twist. But there's just one really great scene where they are on their way to the pet cemetery, and they go from this pretty plain forest to this almost stage-like metamorphic rock path that's shrouded in this purple fog, and it looks so crazy and so cool. And that got me thinking, well, how would you write about how to set that up? Like how all these different aspects work together to paint this perfect picture. So for me, this week, I heavily focus on my description on the things around the main character to kind of build that atmosphere.
No, that's great. How about we just get into it, and then
All
we'll
right,
go ahead and
cool.
talk about it.
So the title of this story is The Banshee and Her Husband. At the turn of the century, Mikael Campbell was born to Susanna and Wilcox Campbell on a chilly night in the small hidden town of Brookhow, placed a few miles south of Mount Basilisk's Rattle. The town was always shrouded in strangity, myth, and secrets, things the world around Basilisk could not mimic. As a youth, Mikael was fascinated by the few books his town cultivated, ornithological studies of lands and creatures far and wide. And quickly he noticed no novel could come close to the unusual creatures around Basilisk. So, at the ripe age of 32, he dedicated the remainder of his life to supernatural ornithology, a field of study fostered by him. This was the first of his many volumes. The Banshee and Her Husband. Very few times will you ever see them, but every time they do visit, beauty awaits in the days. A quote by Miriam, Mother Miriam, Brookhow. As far as anyone knows, this event only happens in Brookhow. Here, you can see them, 2 by 2, dressed in black and queued single file, marching down the streets of Brookhow, daunting figures, silent and focused. They don't eat, nor shop at our fine stores, their only moment of rest being when they stop to wail at the skies and wait for the sick to die. As our town has grown, so have their numbers, which, when met with common understanding and the fantastical miracles they bring, could be seen as a blessing. Historically speaking, the foggy cliff overlooking a level clearing, small, spherical, and smack dab in the center of tall brazen woods, home, was where the last settler, Mother Miriam, of a convoy of 60, brought her husband and 10 children to their final destination, before the giant snake, frozen over by its gaze, roamed the woods. There was no sign of civilization for miles upon miles, only untampered nature and dangerous overgrowth. At that time, the mines were not yet discovered, nor was the trading outposts, selling little to nothing besides snake oil. So the journey was shrouded in the fumarous mulch and steep drop-offs of the lands to the west. Ones many sick and dying have flung themselves off of in the name of their god. From where they came from, they were unsure, for when the journey began, Mother Miriam was little more than an infant. All she could remember was that they faced an endless ocean that one day ended, even though research says there never was an ocean there to begin with. Myth tells us that the water snake Beaufry, an undulating beast, well-spoken and seasoned, whose size coiled into underwater geysers, shifting plates along the Marianas Trench, foretold the end of the waters. As Mother Miriam wrote, Beaufry pleaded with his people to walk steadfast into the unknown east, that as soon as the ocean ends, so will their shelter and feast. Beaufry's warning was half-baked, however, or maybe caramel-dipped for the sake of his people, because they were ill-prepared for the weather, couldn't fend off the coyotes, nor protect against the rot that took their numbers. Even Miriam's husband, Father Beauregard, strong yet stout, befell the rot along the journey. Halfway, the children helped him, their parents long gone. Then it rained, and in the home stretch she carried him, with cracks of lightning licking her heels, and no fewer than miles out. He became too heavy, limp, so she put him in a cart that was supposed to house rations and blankets, that was then barren and slightly moldy, all the way up the hill, that would break through the forest in the form of a cliff. She could not look back, for the wet rattle of inflated lungs ceased well before they entered the tall woods. No longer did he murmur praises of his wife, advising her on all that he knew, only a bleak silence. She planned to leave the cart at the peak, symbolism of her husband's watchful eye, and, at its peak, where she would see the plot that would become my home. She also met her first banshee. Up there, the rain reached a new furiosity. The pit-pat against sedentary became gushing volleys of icy water. Water that she herself said could refill our oceans thrice over. The rocky path smoothed to a plateau that hung mere inches from a greasy fog. It stuck to treetops and slicked the skin, obscuring anything beyond mere inches. As the cliff reached out to the mold skies, an old willow that grew roots in the rock's core caught the rain on its branches. She was motionless in wait, hid in the smallest of nooks under the willow and murmured in the cold rain as if dictating their descent. The banshee wore a jet black dress, was jet black, as if under her gown was a humid void. Her gown was unnecessarily elegant, a remnant of an old civilized world, had cuff sleeves and an oversized cage hoop that pierced the corners of the dress with precision. With a thin veil that could only show the frailest of chins, her head was downturned and arms up high, clasped in prayer and swayed in the wind. It is said that she would have towered the willow if she stood, that the frills of her funeral gown graced the spiny peaks of the woods below. This again is by Miriam's account. Never have I found a banshee or husband any less humanoid than ourselves. And, if her story is true, I'd chalk it up to that lone banshee being that of a dying breed. From here the story delves into mystery, but one telling was that when Miriam brought her husband there, the banshee ceased her prayer to usher Miriam forward, only to turn towards the skies once more and chant over the rain. Many years later, Miriam would write of a sixth sense that flares up in the presence of the supernatural, that things such as banshees are beyond speech, yet quite communicable. This sense told her to approach the banshee and to bring the cart, so she followed, placed the cart beside the banshee and found a dry spot under the willow. After what seemed to be hours, the banshee finally moved away from her prayer to gaze at Miriam's husband, Father Beauregard, who was bloated and green with rot by that time. Miriam watched the banshee closely, her gaze feeding understanding. The banshee ceased her murmurs, satisfied, after looking at Beauregard for minutes. From the onyx under her gown, a frail gray arm unfurled blackened nails towards Miriam. Her hand was diseased. Pale discoloration separated the knuckles of her hands to the width of a bear's paw, and from the paper-thin palms, spidery fingers with 2 joints too many caught raindrops in the wrinkles. That voice in her head said to take her hand, and so she did. It was the best rest of her life, and by the time she woke, the rain had parted for sun and dew. Her husband, the cart, the banshee, and kids were all gone. In fact, she wasn't on the cliff at all. Deep in the woods below the fog, right out of view from the clearing, sat an ancient structure made of stone and silk. 7 black pillars trailed 2 stories up, connected to a pointed roof not unlike a cathedral. Midnight silk streamed from pillar to pillar, wrapping round each thrice, and connecting in the middle. If you didn't know it was there, you'd never find it. However many years it's been there, has integrated the stone monument into the prickly trees and thick vines, as if nature tried to hide her little mistake. This is where Miriam woke, along the black steps a few feet outside the mausoleum. She recounts not being able to look inside, at the center of the silk and stone, that she was sure whatever was in there was not meant for her. Then she heard cries from around the back. Miriam followed the sound to find the children fast asleep in a field of grass and thriving flowers, but they weren't crying. She then found the cart by the tree line, broken down into hunks of pine and scrubbed free of mold, but it wasn't crying. It wasn't until she looked past the children to a dead oak tree, capsized under its weight, where she saw the banshee, crying tears only a mother could shed. Next to her was a man, suited in black that filtered the light. But his wardrobe was more modern, boxy, and glistened in the young sun. His face was covered same as his wife, wore a wide-brimmed Stetson hat, that draped tiny piggin strings that stuck together to form a veil. A notable thing about the husband is that they're the grave diggers of the two, so he held a shovel, firmly pressed in the earth, masterfully crafted from nothing but stone. The couple stood over a tombstone made from fresh pine. Below the tombstone, there sat her husband, unburied atop the dirt and decorated in fresh flowers and local fruits. The rot had left his body, returned it to its natural texture and golden brown. This was the husband she left paradise with, the man who was so strong and righteous she didn't have to be for so many years. This was her husband. She went to them, both bowing slightly to accept her presence, and looked towards her husband, whose smile was deceptively lively. The man handed her the shovel and kneeled down, placing a white-gloved hand over Beauregard's heart. The banshee likewise placed a hand over his heart, and together they rose, hand on hand, till their hands were comfortably by their waist. Then the banshee placed a hand under the man's. He removed his, and the banshee brought clasped hands up to the heavens. Miriam watched as her hands opened to the skies, releasing a raven who was eager to go. With her sixth sense, she heard the words of her husband as he went away, and it brought her to her knees. By the time the raven soared beyond the clouds, the banshee and her husband had disappeared into the mausoleum.
All right, great story, Jarvis. I actually really love the beginning. Very very much. That's the first thing I want to talk about.
The lead in?
Yeah, the lead in. It sets kind of this kind of writing, and I think every text has like an in story in a purpose that's written into the text, right? Like, why is this being written, and how does that influence how things are talked about? Yeah, the frame. And so you set up this one frame, and I think it slowly morphs over time and becomes less of like a specific monster study and more of a like historical myth. And as you go through, it becomes more and more mythologized, and it sounds more like a parable kind of thing. And I think that's a really interesting flavor of story. And of course, it's reinforced by all these things that you do to build this atmosphere of like this mystical things happening in the middle of a forest, in the middle of the wilderness, on a continent that nobody has been on, and these confounding factors that build this nature of just being alone and having mysterious giant things approaching.
So in the process of really writing this one, at first I was really trying to stay very scientific. In fact, at first, this wasn't really the story that I wanted to tell. Like, this is a historical tale of basically how this town was founded, right? But at first, the idea was just to take a picture of this town now, where the people are very well integrated with these strange supernatural happenings that are the banshee and the husband. But as I continued to write, I basically turned a one-paragraph story into the story that we have now. But yeah, I think adding that frame helped me beyond anything else. It really helped me figure out what the story is, where we are. It helped me figure out all of the background so I can solely focus on what is on the page, what is coming across in the text. It was a really great thing for me, and I think that's definitely something I might do more often.
Yeah, absolutely. I could see how that lets the flow go a lot easier, especially once you get into a frame of mind where other things of that kind of flavor, right? Once you start like feeling what you're trying to write, I think carrying that across to readers becomes easier and easier because you connect to all the other media and examples that you've ever experienced of that flavor, and you can bring that back in. I say flavor because that's how I sensationalize it, but for others, it might be a hue or whatever, some other metaphor.
It is definitely a flavor. Like, the addition of it adds a whole new kind of taste to the meal of this story. Like, it's like taking plain Jane Rice and then dousing
Mm-hmm.
it in delicious soy sauce and eel sauce.
Yeah.
It's flavor, and it makes it all that much more better. So
Yeah, yeah, that's very true. You sprinkle in some forest, and you take away an endless ocean, and then add some greasy mists, which is a great descriptor, and yeah, you come up with a whole new flavor of existence. Real quick, I want to talk about the giant banshee, which I thought was really interesting.
yes,
It's very Castle of Otranto. For those who don't know, the Castle of Otranto is this 18th century novel. It's the first Gothic novel, or what we would now call in the genre of like Gothic stuff, right? Like Frankenstein
yeah,
and whatnot. And when you read it, there's like supernatural happenings, but they're all like completely disconnected and ridiculous. Like the first one is that a giant helmet crushes the prince, like it falls from the sky and crushes the prince. So that just reminded me of that, of just like these kind of unstoppably, huge and kind of very hard to understand to the point of like, I don't want to say humor, but not humor, but like a cross between surprise and confusion, right?
yeah. It's Saprusia.
Saprusion, right? So a human being ghost being that huge is definitely something within that genre, and it called me back to reading the Castle of Otranto.
And yeah, I think that was one thing that I was unsure about is the actual size of these banshee, because like one huge thing that I really focused on when it came to writing the banshees, that I wanted to describe what the aura of being in the presence of this banshee is like. It's this creature who looks so human. It has everything, but their hands are huge. They're like double jointed. You can't see their face, and they don't say anything. And I don't know. I was just really trying to work with how, I guess, quote unquote, creepy can I make this, while also at the very end kind of showing they're simply there to pass souls on. So I have a question. As you said in the beginning, as the story went on, it changed, right? It went from something a little bit more scientific to myth, right?
Yeah.
And I guess my question is, did that change work for you? Was it like, did you see it coming, or would you rather it stay the same way as it was in the beginning? Because personally, I feel that as it went on, I got worse at my writing.
Oh,
like I had.
I would disagree with that. Well, so I wouldn't say that like I specifically wanted it to stay in specifically the tone at the beginning. In fact, I really, really, really love the intro, thing at the beginning before the actual like text begins. But I feel that this particular story fits more in the mythos that you did. I think if you continued with the scientific sort of tone, that would be a different story. You would end up telling something different. So I mean I think they're both valid. But that transitionary period before you find the footing within this dark forest, I think is where it falters a little bit. But once you get in there, I think the tone solidifies.
All right, cool, yeah. And I mean, I think that was definitely like the reason why it feels like there's that disconnect is because there was a disconnect within myself too, right? I was trying to figure out how is Mother Miriam going to go from this cliff overlooking this clearing to next to a mausoleum and the grave of her dead husband. So I was like, and then she fell asleep, which I mean, in
Very
my
mythos.
eyes is a cop out,
But that's how like half of the old myths go. Like,
exactly.
so,
But yeah, through doing that, I also, I guess, built up more of what this banshee is and what it can do, because now it can just sleep people, so that's pretty cool.
yeah, I think it worked. If I'm gonna critique somewhere, I think the main thing I'm gonna critique is just not quite knowing what kind of world this is in. So like,
Yeah.
I have the like, I definitely have like the specific setting grounding, right? But I was kind of waffling back and forth of whether this is like, like a real place with just supernatural stuff, like a place in America, or if it was an entirely different location, and if so, like what is expected and what isn't. Because you have these things like
I
the
see.
endless ocean, and which I mean I found them really interesting, and I like them, but I just didn't know how to fit them all together.
I see. Yeah.
Especially,
And then also, there's a giant snakes.
yeah, my main, and I think a main like confounding thing was like certain. I don't know if anachronisms is the right word, because how can it be anachronistic if it's like a different universe? But stuff like a Victorian dress. A
Yeah.
Victorian dress is like the name Victorian comes from the Victorian era of like England, so it kind of implies the
Yeah.
existence of England. So it's like,
Which is specifically why I did not use the word Victorian, because I knew it just wouldn't fit.
did it not go in there? I could have.
Hmm?
Maybe you just described something in so perfectly Victorian that I assumed the word Victorian was in there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the part you're probably thinking of is when it's like she wore a black dress. She was jet black.
I thought for sure you used the word Victorian.
No.
Oh my god! Well, I'm sorry.
I
I'm
specifically
criticizing you for a
made
reason.
sure not to use that word.
Wow, I'm
but
an
I
idiot.
did do everything I could to describe a Victorian dress with the curled up sleeves and the. I just learned that the cage part is actually called a cage hoop.
I
So
didn't know
the
that.
like cage hoop that's piercing out and all that. So I tried.
No, well, I mean, yeah, no, you got it perfectly. Okay. Well, in that case, let me reframe my feeling. Then I think it just then I'm wondering where this sort of thing is coming from. Like, is this post-apocalyptic or whatever, where there was a Victorian sort of civilization here and now it's gone, that kind of thing. Where I just wasn't sure, yeah, where to place it in time and place in the broader sense,
Yeah.
not in the specific moment.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel that's something that I can definitely think about more. Exactly what brand of supernatural is this? Because one thing that I purposely set up was that the Banshee is wearing a Victorian dress, but her husband is wearing a very boxy, more 50s suit, right? And I wasn't sure if these beings are just stuck out of time. And then, of course, talking about what they wear, asked the question, where do they get that? And like, are they human or are they not? And these are definitely things I was thinking about, but there was nowhere in this story that I could really find it to appear on the actual page. And also, it's more stuff that I have to really think about. Like, if she is wearing a Victorian dress, and I say that the dress that she is wearing is a remnant of an old civilization, well, then this is post-Victorian. So, but then also the people that Mother Miriam went with were pilgrims. So that kind of, I guess, asks a lot of questions on like exactly where and when this is, and those are things that I definitely would take into consideration moving forward with this story.
Yeah. It was just like the rest of the atmosphere and setting just was very, very clear to me, and then the only thing that was mixing it up was just it was that. I really like this sort of feeling that comes around by the end of it, that this is almost like one of the only places in existence. Like, this is the only town in existence, and everything kind of like spreads from there. Is kind of how it feels, because there's this like
Okay.
empty forest. I mean, I know that's not exactly the case, but like I got very much a sense of like loneliness and like a new beginning kind of thing, because I know this is the
Definitely.
origin of that town.
Yeah, and I mean, you're almost spot on. I mean, I tried to frame it to where this is the only town where things like this happen, right? And how it's so isolated from everything else. Like, I remember saying that when they got there, this was before there were trading outposts, before there were mining towns, before there was any sense of civilization. And in fact, I think on a different story, if she didn't run into the Banshee, they probably would have just passed up on this little plot of land. So yeah, I don't know. Definitely things to think about in the future. But back on the topic of atmosphere, in this story, what do you think worked the best to kind of set up that atmosphere? Like, what bits did you really grab onto?
I think there's multiple things going into it. I think the sense of loneliness that you build out of just everyone being gone and rotted away, with only basically one real character left.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have all these forests. You go up to a cliff. So you focus a lot on these natural features and make them kind of the center of the setting, where the character is just one tiny blip of right. And you have other things like the greasy mists and stuff like that. And then when you bring in stuff like the banshee, it being so huge and dwarfing, also builds this more of this feeling of just there's unknown and mysterious things going on where you don't know what to expect. It's so different. So these things are going together to build this the feeling of loneliness and mists and rain. And those are the things that went through with me. And the fact that you start off with talking about this ornithology and this sort of like a gothic-esque signalers of
Yeah.
we're studying monsters and supernatural things, and not necessarily evil, but not necessarily good as either. I think focusing a lot on these colors and things really helped me get this feeling.
All right, cool. Yeah. And I know with that, that was definitely something that I did on like a second run through it, because at first I had nothing about the actual journey, besides Mother Miriam having to carry her husband up that cliff. But on a second run, when the story's already there, I just had a blast, just adding as much as much detail, as much sensory as I possibly could. And I feel that that's definitely something that I'm going to take into consideration going forward. That you don't really have to get it all there on the first run. In fact, you won't get it on the first run. I feel that a first run through a story, at least for me, is just plot. You go through and you put the plot down. You put down the whole outline, and then from there you start to build to where all of the plot points that you did set up have a lot more flavor to them. Like, for instance, if I didn't describe the journey up to the Banshee, I don't think seeing this Banshee would have hit the same way, right? In most things that you read, right? When has there been a moment where the description of the atmosphere has gone too far to where you're spending too much time there?
Lovecraft. Definitely Lovecraft.
That's definitely Lovecraft.
I honestly, anything less than Lovecraft, no. And even Lovecraft is doing it with a purpose. So I mean, nothing that modern writers especially, we don't take this kind of really long meandering type style. We focus more on simplicity. Everyone post Hemingway is very the style and the way that people usually want is simplified. And even so, even when we stretch out our descriptions and go a lot further, like Game of Thrones and stuff like that, it still isn't that much.
It's so simple, yeah.
It's not.
It's not delving super deep to things that you wouldn't normally notice.
We don't take 2 pages just for description. We also always have something going on within those 2 pages, even if maybe half of that is description.
And honestly, I feel that that's probably a testament to just kind of where society is going. I mean, I know everyone's heard this argument 1,000 times, but I think one of the reasons why it's hard to really see a writer put down three full pages trying to describe the sky is because a lot of modern readers would just check out after the first paragraph, right?
Yeah, I mean it's a modernist thing. So when modernism was first becoming like a movement, every aesthetic movement is very hard to pin down, but modernism is very focused on efficiency and the modernist influence on writing specifically was focused on just what is the impact. Let's just do the impact. Nothing else matters. strip away all of the tangents and preludes and anything that doesn't serve specifically what is the specific goal does not matter. And this was especially like in more commercial kind of writings, but of course it also filters into every other kind as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was a huge movement dedicating to cutting all of the fat of the previous movements. Like, I know before modernism, I mean, like, so many romantic writings are the pinnacle of meandering and just wafting around this setting. I mean, personally, that is a lot of the stuff that I'm drawn to, because I love just drinking in description and sensory, right? But I also noticed that, like, the sad truth is that a lot of overarching description that is in a lot of older pieces is fat that has been trimmed by the modernist movement. Now, it doesn't mean that fat isn't delicious. In fact, when you're cooking anything meat, the fat is where all the flavor is. But now we're a little bit lean. We are leaner modernists. And now we're postmodern, maybe even postmodern, depending on who you talk to. So I don't know where we're going.
Yeah, it's in a weird place. Basically, and the postmodern criticism is that, like, it's why are we focusing on a purpose of writing at all, kind of thing. What is good?
What is right?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah,
but okay,
it just gets muddy.
That's a bit of a tangent, and if you want to hear more about different literary movements, go listen to Decomposing Worm, because that's what the second half of the podcast is about. So,
look at that self-plug.
Yeah,
Selfless
self-plug. If you've read Worm, go listen. All right, I think that is what we have for your story. So just to finish off, what do you think you learned from writing it?
From writing this, I definitely learned that coming up with a frame, first and foremost, has been very helpful for me. And just, if nothing else, it gets me into the proper headspace that I need to be in to write that story. It takes me from just brainstorming to active thoughts of writing it. So that's definitely something that I learned. Also, I like basically taking very commonly known supernatural beings and just adding my own little twist to them. Like, I know, for instance, in the story, the Banshee never screamed.
Yeah.
Which I purposely did that just because, I don't know. I thought it'd be interesting to see a Banshee that isn't solely yelling to the top of their lungs for no reason. I try my best to apply a reason as to why this Banshee is here. So yeah, definitely doing stuff like that. Beyond anything else, definitely helps me when it comes to coming up with a different lens to look at a lot of things. So yeah, definitely.
All right, let's get into the listener story section.
All right, so this is the listener story section, the best section of this podcast. But before we say anything, we're about to talk about a few stories, all right? And we're going to talk about them in depth, in detail, which means they're going to get spoiled. Now, if you're like me, someone who hates spoilers with a fiery passion, then you would probably want to pause this podcast right now after you hear who we're going to be talking about. Of course, go read them and then come back so you can be a part of the discussion with us.
All right, who are we reading today, Jarvis?
Oh, I'm so glad that you asked. The stories we are going to be talking about this week are by It's Fine by Me, Jarby Jazz, Watercolor Heart, Sarah Penguin, and Kasubalu V2.
That's right. Let's get into it.
And the first one up on the docket is Sarah Penguin with Spy Master and the Princess Part 8, War Room.
That's right. So, of course, this is an ongoing entry in the series. I think we haven't hit every single one, but we hit a good number of them. Again, I'll say this only once every podcast. that the more you submit, the more likely that you are to have your story talked about. And if you submit every single week, you are very likely to get talked about. So if you haven't written with us ever, or you haven't in a while, I know there's some of you, because there's there's a certain amount of commenters, a certain amount of downloads every week, and those are not the same number. So if you aren't writing a story, remember, we'll talk about you. We'll say your username and talk about the thing that you wrote. So so this is part 8 of Sarah Penguin's series, which is about this princess that was captured by her uncle and tortured for a long time, and she's been freed by the spy master of the rebellion, essentially. So in this scene, we are in the war room with Duke Vargulf, who is making preparations for an attack, and the princess is involved in watching this. She's kind of being used as a sort of political pawn, with some agency, but not as much as the spy master would like. We get some description of the room. We get this feeling, that it's secretive. And over time, as we go, we kind of get that the Duke is very confident and kind of taking charge of this whole thing. And by the end of it, we are sort of worried about the princess, because she's going to be, involved in the battle, even though she actually doesn't. I mean, she knows how to fight a little bit, but not enough to, actually be in a battle. She's worried about the people that are going to die, and they just kind of have to be sacrificed, because this is a war. So we're kind of getting the first some of the questions that this kind of series would want to answer. That is it worth to do things like this, throw lives away for a good cause?
I mean, honestly, I really, really like this. It's a really great dialogue scene between two characters. I think, this story does really good at giving us a little bit of deeper characterization of both. And yeah, one really cool thing that I like is that as this series has progressed, there's definitely been not only a lot more great world building, but as you said, there are these questions of worth in this entire war that they're looking towards. So I think this is a really great entry that just has me looking forward to 9, seeing what is next in this story. So really great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the next one we're going to be talking about is by Kasublu V2 with improved exports. Another entry in the Magic Ring series. I don't know why, but I really like that title, Improved Exports. Like,
yeah.
I don't know why, but it's just is nice to me. This one we have Kara and Nimian. Kara is the main character. She's recently gotten some magical powers, and Nimian is going to help her escape the city because there's some Inquisitors about. So this is basically the moment of them escaping. Kara and Nimian are close to the gate. We have some dialogue as Nimian kind of shows Kara how it's done, how sneaking around is done. All the carts leaving the city get inspected, but they're not inspected as much going out as they are coming in. Nimian basically does a little bit of magic to cause a ruckus, basically causing a cart to dump a bunch of stuff, and then they are going to hop into another cart as it exits. But during it, Kara gets a little bit distracted by some glassware. Basically swept up, and we can really tell through the narration how this is taking place. Swept up in how she could use her magic to improve it and do a much better thing. But then Nimian pulls her out of it, and we're a little bit concerned for her. She kind of feels like she almost got caught, and they have a moment of a little bit of bonding. They're holding hands in the cart as it exits, and that's pretty cute. But of course, we're concerned for how this is gonna, how her powers might increase in the future if she doesn't get control of them. So yeah, I really like the story. I think this is another cool entry in a little bit of action as the exit. Kasublu said they were going to do action this time, and of course they admit while there's not like a fight scene here, there is some action, some physical things being done under tension, and I think it's executed pretty well. We have a good picture of the things that we need to know to understand the stakes and exactly what's being done here.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one thing that I really like is that the stakes and tension that was set up in the previous entry has not lost steam going into this one. Because I've noticed that, I know if you're going between multiple pieces, probably writing them at different times, maintaining that steam that you have built up is really difficult, especially since you could be in a totally different headspace. But I do like how there's this great uniformity with this entire series and this one entry. And again, you're getting a lot more characterization of Nimian, a fairly new character. And on top of that, as you said, the stakes just continue to raise, and now they're a little bit more bold about the magic and talking about it. So yeah, I think it's just a really great entry, and it's a fantastic read. So thank you very much. So the next story up is by Watercolor Heart with a untitled story.
So this is an interesting story that kind of gains details as it goes. We start off with this game being played at this tournament with the main character Cryan and his girlfriend Losana.
Mm-hmm.
As they're going through, they're playing a game called Hexes and Hoaxes, which is this sort of magical strategy game we kind of understand, which I thought was really cool. I always love games in stories. I don't know why, but they're just so fun. So we get some rough picture of what's going on, at the very least enough to sort of get the flavor of how this game is played. It's a more complicated version of Risk, very very StarCraft, I felt.
Mm-hmm.
And of course it's like long term. So but then it morphs over time, where we kind of get that this is more of like a flashback, and now in the future Cryan is like the controller of an entire city, and Losana is, his girlfriend is like long dead now, but they have a daughter. Basically, the sort of strategy sort of thing that the beginning of the story talks about is used in how Cryan is deciding to govern and take control of things. We also get hints that this is more of a magical world where the main characters are, I think, more like dragon people,
Yeah.
and the others are different sorts of humanoid animals, and that adds some more flavor. And so there's actually a lot that goes on here, but by the very end we get kind of some greater world building things of how, finishing on the thought that Omen, the name of the daughter, was a word with more than one meaning, and kind of hinting at future troubling things that may occur.
Yeah, I think one thing that I really liked with this story is the parallelism between the beginning and the second half, and it matches up really well. Like through the description of this game and the certain routes that one could play, we understand the main character even more when they are in this position of power, and I think that was done really well. And on top of that, it's fantastic world building. Like, I wasn't sure what I was going into, but as I continued to read, I was hit with more bits on what these people look like, and like their naming conventions, and like exactly how this world works. And I really really liked it for that. And I think honestly, the only thing is I would love to see a continuation to further that world building, and also see what strange thing is going on with the main character's daughter. So really great.
If I'm gonna levy a criticism, it's just that there was a couple of kinds of description that were revealed over time, but I think might have been better served at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Watercolor Heart is discovering what the story is about as it goes on, but the fact that the main characters are humanoid, like dragons, was not said in the beginning. So as we went through and that was revealed to us, it was like a surprise and not in a big reveal sort of sense, but just it was information that we felt that we should have known, but didn't. So just including that information, I think would have made the transition to more magical things as we went on a little smoother. But of course, Watercolor Heart probably hadn't decided that was the case until they wrote it down. One thing I really like here is how so much of the world building things have a direct impact on the characters. Like just the fact that there's this ship out in the water. Yeah, it's this ship that the main character talks about is not just like a ship that they have because they are the king or whatever. It's directly tied to the relationships with the other characters. It was named their Lasana, the love interest, named it after the main character, and now that she's dead, the main character renamed it after her in hopes that Omen's going to sail around on it later on. And there's a lot of emotion around this thing, and I thought it was a worthy detail to include.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you very much. And next up is by Jarby Jazz with Tales of Port Saline, Part 5.
So we start off with these two characters facing off. We have one in leather armor sort of thing, and the other one in this dark blue dress. And it's we have some stuff about the setting. We're kind of in this place with shipping containers. It is raining, bare feet splashing through wet concrete, which I really enjoy. They face off. Neither of them wants to fight, but the woman in the dress is approaching a place where the one in leather is supposed to be protecting. And then they reveal their superpowers. The woman in the dress has these like tentacle ribbons that she can shoot out, and there's some cool visualization stuff going on there. I really like how her power is described. Mm-hmm. And then the other one has these electricity powers. Who she's even surprised how powerful she is, because apparently she has not, I guess, fought in a storm before. And so they do a little bit of fighting, and it's just a couple of blows, but it's really clear what's going on before they decide to continue talking it out and realize that the woman in leather is protecting a bunch of drugs, and she doesn't actually want to protect that, and so they kind of agree to just let this happen. And there's just a wonderful little dialogue here, a cool little fight scene, and I really like the description being done here.
Yeah, I mean this story has really masterful description, especially around the short little fight scene. I mean, I loved how clear it was exactly what was going on, and I mean that's just a testament to the great writing. Also, I just really love anything that's superhero powered people. I just love that idea, and I really like where this story is being taken.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm very excited to read what's coming up next, and really great.
Yeah, the prose is really quick and snappy with all this. Like it's exceptionally clear. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really well done. Okay, the next and final story.
Yeah, next
right?
and final story.
The next and final story is by Fine by Me, another untitled story. So here we have these main characters looking off. They're at this sort of firing range. The main character was named before the story starts Supplicant Sticks, mm-hmm. But during this conversation, after they messed up at the firing range among their peers, they are now being demoted to Hopeful Six. And just the way that is described tells us a lot about what this world is. Mm-hmm. They're sort of we kind of get this picture that these characters are all sort of, they have some sort of magical or scientifically metal bodies, sort of magical in nature. There's something about a galvanic skin response, which I really enjoyed. And so we understand there's this sort of brainwashed or meditative sort of monk-like, highly trained task force is what they're supposed to be, and they seem to be relatively young, and they're like set against each other, and they're supposed to have almost like no emotion, pretty classic stuff. I think it's delivered really well, executed really well here.
Yeah.
And the main character is seething for how they're being treated for just not doing one thing correct, and we get their anger just through how they're described. So by the end of it, they are being sentenced to 2 months of basically being demoted and having to relearn everything. But they swear that when this is over and they're at the Capitol and they finish their training, they are going to use their training against the assembly that they work for, and they would have their revenge.
Yeah, I mean, I really, really like this story. I love how much world building is done in the naming convention alone. As you said, it's so telling as to what this larger world would look like. And also, I really like how focused it is. Like, this story could
Mm-hmm.
be talking about the entire organization and so many other things, but it starts off with with Six getting demoted, and then we get to kind of figure out what that means as we are reading
Mm-hmm.
the story, and then what these other numbers are really doing and how they are performing. I think it's done so well to where I am immediately in, and I feel that's like fantastic. And yeah, I really really love this story, and really great job.
Yeah, I think in the comments, it's fine by me. That thinks that their story is total crap. It is not.
No.
They say that they wrote for 15 minutes and then got bored and decided to shotgun as many YA plot hooks at the screen. And the thing is though, like those tropes they're ingrained in how we think of stories. And of course, especially with something like a 30-minute do the right thing
Yeah.
story, it's more than acceptable. In fact, you really need to use those tropes to efficiently convey a lot of information at once, right? When you do something like do the hopeful six and the supplicant six, right? You have this title system. Of course, it's been done before somewhere, not in this particular flavor, but um, just by having that, we suddenly gain so much insight because of how we're comparing it to all the other times that something similar has gone on. So now we
Yeah.
very quickly understand, right? They have to give up their names to be part of this. They're somewhat brainwashed, at least they're supposed to be. There's a lot of value set in these things, and renaming is used to punish people. So we very quickly understand a lot, and it's just more efficient that way. So I think executing on YA tropes or any tropes and just trying to deliver them in an honest way, I think. Is something to practice.
Yeah.
And I don't think you don't shy away from using tropes because then you just won't be able to write anything.
Well, all right. Thank you so much to everyone who did write this week. We wish and we hope and we pray that one day we will be able to read and talk about all of your stories, but there simply isn't enough hours within the day. But we do want to say thank you to everyone who did write a story and submit it this week. So, thank you very much to Sarah Penguin.
Thank you to Asgar Zeigel, who wrote an entry from last week. We really appreciate you taking the time to do it. Of course, we couldn't select it but this week, but of course, your chance of getting selected did still go up. So the next time, it will go in there.
Nice. And thank you very much to Kasubalu V2.
Thank you, Watercolor Heart.
Thank you, One Mary Lilac.
Thank you, Jarby Jazz.
And thank you, Fine by Me. And also, we want to give a big do the right thing thank you to all those who left comments. Leaving comments, as we say every week, is half of the job of doing the right thing. Not only would you understand more so about another person's story and find things that you like, but also you'll be able to analyze your own story all that much more. So thank you very much to Sarah Penguin, Watercolor Heart, Jarby Jazz, Kasubalu V2, Fine by Me, and Ace of Sword. Thank you so much for leaving comments this week and just doing the right thing overall. If you want to be like all of these wonderful writers and sit down for 30 minutes and use whatever week's word suits your fancy, then you can go to our subreddit, which is /r/do the right thing. All you have to do is go there, find whatever week you want to write a story for, and get to cracking.
That's right. If you don't have a Reddit account or just want to tell us about something, you can send us an email at rightthingcast@gmail.com.
Exactly. And if you want to have as much time as possible to see next week's words, I'm talking about 7 full days, y'all. Well, first and foremost, you could just wait to the end of this podcast. Literally, if you wait 10 minutes, maybe even 5, you would have heard next week's words. But if you don't want to do that, even though I think that you really should, you can go to our Twitter, which is at RightThingCast, where we try our best to post weekly next week's words.
Yeah, I forgot to last week. And then it was like 3 days in, it was like, oh, well, I missed 1 week, but I didn't for this coming week. So I'm back on track.
Yeah, we're back.
I'm really good at this social media thing, guys. But all right. So we of course are part of Doof Media.
Doof.
This wonderful podcast network that we're a part of. Very proud to. I'm really bummed out that I'm not driving as much anymore because I'm so behind on almost every one of our
Yeah.
podcasts. I just don't listen enough right now. So I'm hoping that I can do that soon because I have so much to catch up on. Of course, Pale Reflections is continuing to cover Pale. I love them how they talk about the show so much. Learning more about just American magical practices through the lens of Pale, Wildbow's newest web serial. Yeah, really, really great stuff going on over there. And of course, we have so many other shows on the Doof Media Network. I haven't talked about What to Say in a very long time, but it's a wonderful podcast with Scott and his wife Elise, covering the hit. I have no idea what to call it, but I guess teen drama show, The OC. And it's just a wonderful, lighthearted show, and listening to it always cheers me up. So, I really recommend them.
So, if you want to support us and everything else that we do, I'm talking about from podcasting to all these wonderful events that we do through Doof Media. Well, then you can support us on our Doof Media Patreon. We have a whole bunch of levels ranging from $1, $5, $10, $20, and $40, right? And
I think 45, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's might be one even above that, but it's not like a expectation that anyone stays on that for more than a month.
Yeah, exactly. So. But I mean, when you do sign up, not only are you helping us create the content that you probably like to enjoy, but you also get access to the Doof Media Discord, which is full of great people all looking to have fantastic conversations about any and every facet of life. So there are benefits all around when it comes to sign up for the Doof Media Discord.
I think I want to plug just about the Discord is that so we have a Doof Media Twitch account, but as well Discord does have a function where you can stream whatever game you have just to the people there. So I sometimes do that, just when, my rig can't really do Twitch for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So, whenever I just want to kick up a game and I don't want to schedule it in addition or make a commitment, sometimes I'll just start a stream. And also there's a lot of other people on the Discord that do that. It's just a really great way that you can you hop in, you see someone's playing a game, and you just jump in the channel and you can just talk to them as they play their thing, and it's a good time.
Well, all right, Matthias, what do you think next week's words are?
What do I think they are?
What do you think there are? If you're just spitballing.
If I'm just spitballing, I might think that they are suppress, dab, sia, and repiclaug.
Okay. I don't know what half of those mean, but you were really, really close. Next week's words are actually suppress, bad, east, and goalkeeper.
Wow. So I had it backwards.
Yeah.
I was really
you
close.
Had it completely backwards. It was like you were speaking pig Latin.
I read them backwards.
I know you did.
All right. So we have suppress as in to keep something down, right? To suppress a feeling, to suppress a revolt, right? To suppress dissent, make sure that people can't hear it. Bad as in not good. East as in not west. And goalkeeper as in, I wish I could think of a not there, but I can't. But the person in front of the goal who keeps the ball out of it, essentially.
Is there any other definition for goalkeeper?
I think you could do something with like the keeper of the goal, like so there's like a goal in the future, and so someone like keeps that in mind or something.
So like using it as a position. Yeah. Okay.
Or everyone can just write some sports next week. That's possible.
All about sports. All the footballs. All right, so since I'm not writing next week, I'm going to make you tell me what your story is next week, Matthias.
Next week, the theme for our discussion, right, Atmosphere was this week. Next week is going to be themes. So basically the message or what you're trying to impart on the reader, which doesn't necessarily have to be a very specific, parable kind of message, always make sure you treat your friends well. It doesn't have to necessarily be like that. It can also just be something that you're exploring here and providing some direction for people's thoughts.
Yeah, and I mean, theme is very, very broad. So There's definitely a lot of discussion and ideas that can be brought up when we do talk about that. So make sure to listen in on it.
That's right. So my story is going to be, okay. So in far in the east, there's a bad guy.
Oh.
There's a bad guy far in the east. He controls the entire nation of country, and he suppresses all dissent. And so there was a ragtag team of rebels who plotted on how they were going to bring him down. And this is what they came up with. See, the bad guy, the bad ruler who suppresses everyone, he really likes sports. He really, really loves sports. So he watches the soccer game, which is not really a soccer game. It's a different game entirely, but it's very close to soccer. The only real difference being that people have flags on their backs, but it doesn't really affect anything else. Anyway, so at the big game, right? Of the year he always attends. So the ragtag team of rebels form their own team, and they go up the ranks in this amazing season. It's a pretty great underdog movie. In fact, they have a dog that's part of it. The dog is actually the goalkeeper, who blocks the ball. And so they go up and they do the team in the final game, and they're facing off actually against the bad guy's family, because he's really corrupt. He's going to be they're the opposite team, and they're supposed to win. The rebels are supposed to sabotage themselves, but they don't. They fight on, and then they win. And then at the very end, when it seems like they're actually about to lose, but they aren't, they kick the ball. The goalkeeper dog kicks the ball, like backwards, and it sails into the goal and then explodes, killing everyone there instantly, including the bad guy.
Wow. I am looking forward to reading your Air Bud fan fiction.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to have to top that somehow. So my story, which this is one I've really been thinking about, right? So put your mind in the future. Everything's great. Okay. Skyscrapers the size of mountains. There's no traffic. Everyone has food. Everything is beautiful and bright. But we've ran out of baby oil. Whether people are just having too much sex or their skin is just too smooth, the masses of the world population used up all of our reserves of baby oil to where there's nothing left. So this small ragtag group of devout baby oil worshippers, because by now it's become more of a religion than a device used to lubricate your body.
Naturally.
This ragtag team journeys to the east to find the very last well of underwater baby oil. The issue with this is that everyone knows about it, so it's kind of like a race for the last piece of treasure left, right? So they run into bandits, and they run into cops. They run into bad guys and good guys, and they even fall into a football stadium and have to play 12 rounds with Derek Jeter. And if you don't know how football is properly played, Derek Jeter is the goalkeeper. But eventually, after all these crazy and kooky antics, they finally made it to the underwater reservoir of all the baby oil that God gave us when he first made this beautiful world. And then, in that very final moment, our two heroes decide that they should not take the baby oil, because if it was all for themselves, then eventually they would suppress the masses with the price of their baby oil. So instead of creating this wonderful and joyous monopoly that would have given them as much money as they possibly would have wanted, they decided to bottle this baby oil and give it to the masses so you too can have the smoothest skin anyone's ever seen.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a really, really good story, Jarvis.
No, thank
and
you.
I think my favorite part about it is this theme that, like, at the very end, you push past your greediness, and you just make sure that you do the right thing.
Do the right thing, yeah. I mean, that's all. That's what it's all about, man.
Mhm.
All right, I'm sorry.